We begin with this breaking news out of Gaza. Israeli officials tell CNN that Israel has launched its ground incursion into Gaza City. They say it's going to be phased and gradual at the beginning. The ground incursion was supposed to proceed only after the Israeli military forced the complete evacuation of the densely populated urban area. But so far, only a fraction of that population has left the city. Let's go to CNN's Paula Hancock. She joins us live from Abu Dhabi. So, Paula, the ground offensive has begun. What can you tell us?
Well, Rosemary, we're hearing that from two Israeli officials, as you say, one saying that it was going to be, quote, phased and gradual at the beginning. But what we've been seeing in recent days is an acceleration of bombing of high-rise buildings, of any significant buildings within Gaza City ahead of this ground incursion. Now, we have had confirmation from the Ministry of Health overnight that some 38 Palestinians have been killed in some of those strikes overnight. We have been seeing a stream of people, according to videos coming into us, heading to hospitals, being taken into hospitals. We have seen also images of bodies of bloodied children. So once again, children being caught up in what is happening on the ground in Gaza City. Now, in recent days, we, in particular on Monday, we had been seeing a mass exodus of Palestinians from Gaza City. We had seen some, the lucky ones, who were able to get some kind of transport with their belongings piled high on the transport, others leaving by foot. The Israeli military had called on the full evacuation of the city. It is believed that up to 1 million people were in Gaza City when those evacuation orders came through about a week ago. It's hard to know for sure exactly how many people are still in Gaza City, but there are certainly at least tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of civilians still inside that area. An Israeli security official on Monday estimated that some 320,000 Palestinian civilians had left the area, but that does leave a lot that are unaccounted for. They have been told by Israel to head south, to head to Khan Yunis, to Al-Mawasi, which it has called a humanitarian zone. But it's worth reminding ourselves that this is something that the UN, that NGOs, that many countries around the world have called on Israel to halt this takeover of Gaza City because of the humanitarian situation on the ground, which will be worsened if up to 1 million people are displaced once again. So we are having these reports coming through to us and confirmation from two Israeli officials that this ground incursion has begun. It is also very concerning for the families of the Israeli hostages. We saw overnight that some of those families set up a late-night protest and tents just outside the Prime Minister's residence, calling on him to stop the bombardment of Gaza City, as they are concerned that this will risk the lives of the hostages that are still being held. There are some 48 hostages still being held by Hamas and other groups, 20 of them believed to still be alive. In fact, we also heard from the US President Donald Trump, who said on social media that he had read reports that Hamas was bringing some of the hostages to ground level out of the tunnels to use them as human shields. He said they should not do that. If they do, then all bets are off, which Hamas responded to by saying that Trump's statement is blatantly biased towards Zionist propaganda, saying that it is this Gaza City incursion that is risking the hostages. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has insisted this is the fastest way to end the war. He has insisted that this is the way to be able to ultimately defeat Hamas. As I say, it is an idea that has international condemnation, but also some within Israel itself. We have Israeli sources telling us that even the IDF chief of staff is questioning whether this is the correct way to do it. He is worried about the hostage lives. He's worried about the risk to soldiers who will be carrying out this ground incursion following the airstrikes, and also concerned about the humanitarian situation. So there are great concerns around the world about this operation for Israel to take over Gaza City. But as we have it at this point, two Israeli sources confirming that the ground incursion has begun. It is starting from the outskirts and working in. Rosemary?
All right, our thanks to Paula Hancock bringing us that live update from Abu Dhabi. Appreciate it. I do want to bring in retired Major General Mark McCauley now. Thank you, sir, for joining us. So, as we just heard from Paula, two Israeli officials are saying this ground incursion is underway. It's just gotten underway, saying that this would be phased and gradual, which is interesting because we know that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio just told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he had the full support of the United States, but as long as this was swift, as long as this happened very quickly. So how do you square that when you're talking about something that's phased and gradual?
Yeah, certainly. Those two words in the context of the conflict in Gaza, and as we approach the imminent, if not already in effect, Israeli incursion into Gaza City, those two words really have no meaning. Whether you do it concisely, which has a certain appeal to it, meaning it is often with an adjective called surgical conciseness, so that fewer people, fewer civilians become the target or lose their lives as a consequence of this invasion, or what was disseminated by the Israeli, the IDF and its staff, that this was going to be slow, methodical, which, from my perspective, is probably the only way that the IDF, assuming that we're looking at the big picture of the IDF attempting to take over the entirety of Gaza City, there's no such thing as doing it concisely. Slow, methodically, that has certain advantages. Some of those advantages are that you're a bit more careful with the civilians you come in contact with, but also you prepare yourself. And something that I wanted to talk about, and that was the air attacks on the multi-story buildings that we saw over the last 2 days. And that, to me, is a clear indication that the IDF was going to move. And the reason for that is quite simple. No invading force wants to have 20 stories or 25-story buildings available in front of the movement of that column of Israeli soldiers. It's just too dangerous. So as the tacticians, not the strategists do the big thinking, but the tacticians, the colonels on the ground, the majors on the ground, they're looking at those buildings and they say, take them out, because it eliminates not only a great opportunity for an enemy to scatter, attack, and perhaps violently defend its particular area. So no tall buildings. The Gaza Palestinians do not have the ability to overlook, meaning from the 23rd story, you're looking straight a couple of miles. So that was really the beginning, not today. It was beginning 2 days ago.
And why do you think that Israel would launch the ground incursion and start all of this before all of the Palestinian population have actually been evacuated? Because, I mean, they started that process.
Oh my gosh. You've asked one of the most difficult questions, because you're really asking me to speculate as to the mind of the leadership in Jerusalem. And that is something even none of us can really do. I suppose if you look at it from a military perspective, you're saying, well, time is of the essence, that the ground was prepared, the big buildings were knocked down. We, the Israelis, I shouldn't use we, meaning us, it's just the Israelis themselves saying that they have taken all manner of measures to alert the population of Gaza to evacuate. and only 300,000 or so have evacuated. And the Israeli general staff then coming back and saying enough is enough, or really Netanyahu saying enough is enough. We're just going to start this thing. And whether that's morally right or wrong, I leave that to people who have the expertise in that area. From my perspective, from a military decision point, okay, Netanyahu made that decision. Maybe tactically it's of some value. From a humanitarian standpoint, of course, he's going to have to live with a huge number of Gazan civilians who will lose their lives. There's no way you can avoid that with the number of people that remain in that city now.
And so with your military, an extensive military background, what are you watching for with this ground incursion, and what do you see as the major challenges and the big risks ahead with this?
Yeah, there are a lot of ways of answering that question, and certainly not in 2 or 3 minutes, but I'll attempt to do so. One is the Israelis have to have, we're not privy to their tactical plans, but most probably are looking, based upon intelligence that has already been gathered, for those locations that might be the prime locations for the hostages. Now, the Israelis have accumulated a significant amount of intelligence data. So if I were to look at their maps, most probably we would see objectives circled. The second is to eliminate one of the more difficult defensive positions in urban warfare. This is urban warfare. It's a city. Israel is attacking a city. And that, again, not only are the tall buildings, but the subterranean, the tunnels, that make it incredibly difficult to conduct any sort of operation as big as what Israel does, or even a smaller police incursion, because those tunnels provide superlative defense for the occupants of those tunnels. So I believe that the first order of business is to find the hostages and, of course, eliminate the remaining leadership of Hamas, whomever and whatever Hamas retains in Gaza City.
We are following breaking news this hour. 2 Israeli officials telling CNN the IDF has launched its long-anticipated ground incursion into Gaza City. And we've been hearing explosions and seeing smoke from camera positions in southern Israel throughout the morning. Hospital officials tell CNN Israeli strikes have killed at least 38 people in overnight attacks. The Israeli military has accelerated its attacks on high-rise buildings in Gaza City over the past week, claiming Hamas is using them to monitor the movements of Israeli troops. The incursion was supposed to proceed only after the Israeli military forced the evacuation of the densely populated urban area. But only a fraction of the population has left so far. Joining me now is Fawaz Gerges, a professor of international relations at the London School of Economics and Political Science, is also the author of What Really Went Wrong: The West and the Failure of Democracy in the Middle East. Appreciate you being with us.
My pleasure.
So, Israel's ground incursion into Gaza City has begun with the goal to take control of that city. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as we know, offered Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu full U.S. support for this offensive. What are your greatest concerns about this ground incursion? What do you worry about?
Well, what I worry about is that the unbearable and undescribable suffering of the Palestinian people. This new phase in the war, which was declared by the Israeli Defense Minister Katz, he said, Gaza is burning, Gaza City. You have 1 million people who basically have sheltered in Gaza. Multiple times they have been displaced. Only about 300,000 Palestinians have left Gaza City in the past few days as a result of the warnings by the Israeli army. So you have about 600 to 700,000 Palestinians in Gaza City. And yet the Israeli defense minister says Gaza is burning, and it is literally burning. In the past 4 days, according to the United Nations, 7 of the tallest buildings in Gaza City have been destroyed. Israel says they are Hamas bases. The United Nations has 7 schools and 4 clinics basically were based in these buildings. And you really cannot understand, we cannot understand this strategic escalation of the Israeli war in Gaza City without the unwavering support by the Trump administration to the Israeli government. Yesterday's in the press conference in Israel, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has made it very clear that the Trump administration fully supports Israeli plans for Gaza. And what's Israeli plans? Total victory, absolute victory. The return not only of the 48 Israeli hostages, but the surrender of Hamas, the destruction of Hamas, and Israel's basically freedom of action over all of Gaza. So the reason why we're seeing this particular war today, this particular escalation, there is an organic relationship between this strategic escalation and the Trump administration, President Trump, doubling down on his green light to Benjamin Netanyahu.
So what do you think this ultimately means for any diplomatic solution? Does this essentially mark the end of any hope for a ceasefire and hostage release agreement?
Well, I think this is it. Yesterday there was a major conference in Doha by most of the Arab states and the Islamic states. Last week, Israel attacked basically Qatar, which hosted the political leadership of Hamas, as was playing a leading role in the talks between Israel and Hamas. And the Emir of Qatar, Tamim, said, well, look, how do you basically, if you really want a peaceful settlement, if you really want your hostages back, why would you attack the country that is mediating between you and Hamas? And why would you kill the negotiators with whom you are negotiating to free the hostages? What we are seeing today is the end of any light at the end of the tunnel. My fear is that permanent war, all-out war, serves Benjamin Netanyahu's strategic goal, which is basically postponing the inevitable, the end of his political career. And basically he has legal cases because of accusation of criminality inside Israel itself. The reality is, most of what we're seeing today in Gaza, in the West Bank, Israel attacks in Syria, in Lebanon, in Qatar. The reality is that the United States has forfeited its leadership role in the world, and President Trump has been outmaneuvered and outplayed by Benjamin Netanyahu. What we're really seeing today is, here is the irony, is that while Rubio says that what will happen in Gaza is a concise military operation, he used the term concise, the top Israeli military leader, the chief of staff, has basically expressed misgivings about the political leadership decision to escalate the war, because he realizes you cannot defeat a movement like Hamas, you cannot kill all of them. And the families of the Israeli hostages, the beloved one, accuse Benjamin Netanyahu, quote unquote, of being the biggest obstacle to returning their beloved ones back home. So what we're saying is that not only undescribable and tragic conditions of the 2.2 million Palestinian people, but possibly the death, sad, of the 20 Israeli hostages that are still alive in Gaza.
And what do you think happens once Israel takes full control of Gaza City, which is the goal here?
Well, for your own viewers, Israel, this is not the first time that Israel has taken control over Gaza City. This is the second and third time. In 2024, Benjamin Netanyahu declared all-out victory over Gaza City. So this is the second and the third time that he sent his army to Gaza City. What we're seeing in Gaza today is guerrilla warfare. Even though Hamas has been degraded, even though Israel has killed almost 8,000 Hamas fighters, but Hamas now has moved into a guerrilla force. And Israel really, and according to Israeli military strategists, not American military strategists, that basically Gaza could become, Israel's Vietnam. the reality is even the Americans could not really win in Iraq and Afghanistan, a guerrilla war. And so many Israeli generals are warning the political leadership that you have an extremist government whose vision of total victory, absolute victory, a greater Israel. They want to create greater Israel. They want to have military forces in Syria, in Lebanon, again, changing the face of the West Bank, trying to steal Palestinian land. I mean, this is quite so irrational that the United States has forfeited its role to restrain Benjamin Netanyahu. The entire world, literally, the entire world wants this war to end, except the United States. And President Trump yesterday sent his Secretary of State to reinforce and reiterate America's full support for Israel's irrational and criminal war in Gaza.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good morning and welcome to our viewers joining us from the United States and all around the world. I'm Brian Abel, and we begin with breaking news out of Gaza. Israeli officials telling CNN that Israel has launched its ground incursion into Gaza City. The Israel Defense Forces calling on residents to evacuate, quote, the combat zone, saying it is destroying Hamas infrastructure. The sources say the operation is going to be phased and gradual at the beginning. The ground incursion was supposed to proceed only after the Israeli military forced the complete evacuation of the densely populated urban area. But so far, only a fraction of the population has actually left the city. Meanwhile, the Israeli defense minister posting this on social media today, saying in part, Gaza is burning. The U.S. Secretary of State meeting in Doha now after meeting with Israeli Prime Minister in Israel on Monday. Sources tell CNN Marco Rubio told Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel has the full support of the U.S. for the assault on Gaza City, but stressed the operation should move quickly.
I think we have a very short window of time in which a deal could happen. We don't have months anymore, and we probably have days and maybe a few weeks, so it's a key moment, an important moment.
All this as an independent United Nations commission concludes that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Israel has denounced that report. Let's go now to CNN's Paula Hancock joining us live from Abu Dhabi with all of this, and it seems we are entering another chapter, Paula.
That's right, Brian. We have a statement as well that's just come in from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying, quote, "We began an intense operation yesterday in Gaza. The state of Israel is at a critical stage in this struggle and there are consequences." So this confirmation from the Israeli Prime Minister that the ground offensive to try and take over Gaza City has begun. Now, we did hear from one of those officials that it would be phased and gradual at the beginning. The one question that many have, though, is exactly how many civilians may be still in Gaza City at this time. Over recent days, we have been seeing an exodus of people, many of them on foot, trying to carry their belongings, walking away from Gaza City. The Israeli military evacuation order said they have to go to the south, to Al-Mawasi, which they call a humanitarian zone. NGOs, though, and the United Nations have pointed out that it is not a humanitarian zone and there is very little humanitarian aid there, and it is severely overcrowded. We did hear from an Israeli military source on Monday saying that they believe 320,000 civilians have left Gaza City since that evacuation order just a week ago. There was believed to be up to 1 million civilians in the city, so it is really unclear how many people are still there. Now, we do have distressing images coming through to us, which I must warn our viewers are of graphic nature, but it shows the casualties that are being brought into hospitals overnight. We know 38 have been killed according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, and we have also seen footage of the bodies of bloodied children that are being brought into hospitals. Also, some injuries are being brought in as well. So this is a moment that many countries around the world had called on Israel to prevent, to stop this attempt to take over Gaza City. We heard also from the United Nations that there were concerns that this would make a humanitarian situation even worse. We've heard internally in Israel as well, Israeli sources saying that there was disagreement within a security cabinet meeting where the IDF chief of staff said it shouldn't go ahead because there were concerns for the hostages still being held by Gaza and others by Hamas and others in Gaza. There was concern for the risk to soldiers during this operation and also of the humanitarian situation. The Israeli Prime Minister, though, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been adamant that it does have to go ahead. He believes this is the way to defeat Hamas. He believes that this is the fastest way to defeat Hamas. Up until this point, the United States has given the green light. It is standing by Israel when it comes to this decision. It is very difficult, though, to find another country in the world that does agree this is the way to go. And we have been hearing from NGOs, from the United Nations, severe concerns for those civilians now on the ground in Gaza City that have not managed to evacuate until this point. We've just seen on social media from UNICEF saying, quote, "It will multiply children's suffering exponentially, ripping away the last vestiges of protection. They need protection. The world must act now." Back to you, Brian.
That is quite the warning from UNICEF. Paula Hancock, thank you, and we know you'll be back with us again to talk about that new UN Commission report that says Israel is committing genocide in Gaza and how Israel is reacting to the report. Paula Hancock in Abu Dhabi for us. Thank you. I do want to bring in now Alon Pincus, who is the former Israeli Consul General for New York. And Alon, thank you for being with us and on such short notice. Appreciate it. You heard Paula Hancock talk about what this looks like for Gaza City, especially when we talk about the civilian casualties and the images that we are already seeing. What do you make of this, especially when you hear Netanyahu say there are consequences? Are these the kind of consequences that we're talking about here?
No, I think, Brian, that the one thing that we can discern from Mr. Netanyahu's behavior or pattern of behavior or policy making in the last 2 years is that it is completely detached from cost-effective calculations, completely oblivious to the consequences, and completely and willingly blind to what the implications are. Now, what do we know about this operation? Well, we know that it does not, I emphasize, does not have clear military goals, not because I say so, but because the IDF chief of staff says so. We know that it's going to cost lives because that's the nature of war. And we know that it's probably going to sacrifice the lives of most, if not all, of the remaining live hostages, which we assume are 20. We also know that if this, as Paula correctly described it, is going to be phased and gradual, if this goes on, then by the end, when it ends, rather, within a week, within a month, or within 4 months, it's going to be a guerrilla warfare in a densely populated or densely urban warfare setting, which means that Israel effectively will occupy 75% of the Gaza Strip and 75% of Gaza's population, without an end in sight, without any vision of how this is going to play out, with the world looking, condemning, criticizing, and opposing this, and that UN recommendations on Israeli genocidal intentions that you just quoted and said you'll come back to with Paula. So what we do know is that all international pressure and all domestic reservations and pressure that Netanyahu faced, he proved to be impervious to. He just has one thing and one overriding principle in mind, and that is to perpetuate the war indefinitely, right now.
That's what I want to ask you next is you talk about the world looking on. You talk about the pressure that other nations were placing on Netanyahu and on Israel. Yet here we are in this moment. Was it going to end up here regardless of what happened, regardless of the casualties? Because we also heard that it was going to be slow and steady, yet Marco Rubio wants it to be quick. That's what the U.S. is approving of. That doesn't square with one another strategy-wise. So what do you make of this moving forward? Was this the ultimate goal, just to have this incursion at this point?
Yeah, that's exactly my point, Brian. I mean, you listen to the IDF chief of staff, and then you listen to the U.S. Secretary of State, and you think these two gentlemen are talking about two different wars and two different scenarios and two different outcomes. While the chief of staff is saying, the Israeli chief of staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, is saying this is going to be time-consuming, it's going to cost casualties, and I'm not sure that we can achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve, he's saying to the government, which you still haven't made clear to me. And there comes Marco Rubio in a display of cluelessness, I'm sorry to say, and basically says, oh, this has to be quick and fast. What do you mean quick and fast? You don't do this quick and fast. You tried to do quick and fast in Iraq. You did quick and fast in Vietnam. You did quick and fast in Afghanistan. It doesn't work that way. And so what you see, going back to your question or remark, Brian, what you see right now is just a perpetuation of the war. We're going to end up in a week, in a month, in 4 months or 5 months, basically effectively occupying Gaza. We're going to own Gaza. And Gaza is not something you want to own. Look at the footage that you're just showing on a split screen. There's no way to govern that place without a ceasefire first, and then a clear and coherent plan for post-war Gaza, something that Israel, well, Mr. Netanyahu rather, has refused to do until now.
Alana, we've been talking about the cause. Let's talk about the effect now. What does this mean for the families of the hostages? What does this mean for the Gazans who did not evacuate, and for the children that we saw there in the videos?
Well, I can't even begin to imagine what the families of the Israeli hostages are feeling. Aside from, fear, anxieties, and horror, thinking about the worst scenarios, and it's very easy to think about the worst scenarios, I'm sorry to say. They also feel betrayed and feel that they have been lied to repeatedly by Mr. Netanyahu, by his defense minister, by Israeli negotiators. For the better part of the last 6 months, they've been promised a deal. And then there was a deal in January that Israel reneged and violated in March. And there has been a series of Witkoff papers, Witkoff 1 and Witkoff 5 and Witkoff 7. Okay, none of that matured into any agreement. Then Mr. Netanyahu changed his mind entirely. And rather than partial or piecemeal agreements, he said, okay, we want a big agreement. But he's not even negotiating that now. So I feel for them. And I think the Israeli public is livid about this, but we're going to have to wait and see. As for the Palestinians, not enough the death, devastation, and desolation that the non-combatants, that the civilians of Gaza have endured in the last almost 2 years. They're going to see more of that in the next few days and weeks. I'm tragically sorry to say.